One. There it is. A little bit late, but here we go. We're getting ready to rock and roll. Welcome everybody to another fun episode. We're going to have fun. We got a guest coming to us from Canada today. It's going to be awesome. All right, here we go.
Practicing Polyamory, real-life perspectives from the imperfect people of polyamory. The mission of the Practicing Polyamory podcast is to provide a platform for all of the real-life, flawed humans that practice polyamory so that we might all learn from one another and grow as a community. Enjoy the show.
All right. We are getting ready to rock and roll this thing. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in. Before we jump in, I just want to quickly cover three things once again. First of all, we did it! We got past the 100 YouTube subscribers mark, so you can now find us at youtube.com/practicingpolyA, and I'm going to spend this week celebrating. If you want to subscribe, we're still looking for subscribers, of course. We'll appreciate it. It is free. I'll mention that. It is free to subscribe, so please do so, and follow us also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, at practicingpolyA. And now that we're at the 100 YouTube subscribers, I would love if you would leave some iTunes or Spotify or wherever it is that you're downloading the podcast. Leave us a review, 5 stars if you think we deserve it. I hope so. Would love that, and help us show up higher on those search results. All right. Number 2, super excited about this still. This week on Friday, going to have Dr. Eli Sheff on the show at 11 a.m. She's the author of The Polyamorist Next Door and is the foremost expert on polyamorous families. If you have questions, send me a DM on any social media at Practicing Polya, and make sure to go to bondingproject.com. Take the bonding type test to get an idea of your bonding style, because we're going to be talking about that again this Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And the last thing I always want to remind everybody, if you're listening to this podcast, you are a welcomed guest to be on the show. Whether you're polyamorous, polycurious, professional serving the polyamorous community, and whatever your orientation is, gay, lesbian, trans, NB, ace, aro, queer, whatever it is, we want to hear your story. The more stories we hear, the more the world learns about us, the more representation we have, and the better we can serve our community. All right, that's it for the 3 things. Now the most important thing, to introduce our guest. Our guest today is no stranger to polyamory, as she's been practicing non-monogamy for 12 years and polyamory for the past 4. She's the hinge in a V, or Z if we count the entire polycule, and as an avid and active outdoors aficionado, she loves to be outside playing hockey and baseball with her partners. One big lesson that she's learned over the years is that polyamory is not for the faint of heart. Managing multiple relationships and the emotions surrounding them takes a lot of work, but can be incredibly rewarding. Reducing the stigma around polyamory and non-monogamy is super important for her, as she and her partners are working through the challenges of coming out and being public. I'm excited to chat with and learn from her today. Joining us today from our neighbor to the north in British Columbia, did I get that right? Canada. No? Oh, I was off. All right. Well, in Canada anyway. Welcome to the show, Jessie C. Jessie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you making the time.
Thank you. Yeah, we're just actually kind of near the Toronto area, just in the kind of the rural area of Ontario. So
Ontario. One of these days I'm going to learn my Canadian states and get these things right. But for now, thank you for your graciousness and, letting me make mistakes. I'm human, right? We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes.
It's worse. It's so much worse.
So much worse. Let's just jump into some of these mistakes. Well, you know what? Let's not necessarily talk about mistakes all the way through, but let's talk about Jessie's history. You wanted to go over kind of some of the stuff that you have gone through. Tell me a little bit about your story. 12 years non-monogamous, 4 years polyamorous, and then sometime in there you met your current partner, right? Tell me a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so I was really young when I met my husband. So our current situation is I'm married to a man, and I also have a boyfriend, and we all live together. And I also have
Nice.
a female maida as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, so when I went off to school, I was kind of young, and we kind of did the long distance relationship, and we were kind of open during that time, but kind of like just more of I guess the experimental type, I guess you would call it, going
Mhm,
through
mhm.
the university phases. So that was like interesting in itself, but I always felt like I was missing like kind of that connection part. Like it wasn't just
Right.
about like sexual for me. So that was really, really challenging kind of going through that. We kind of ended up gearing towards like close friendships a lot of the time,
Mhm.
just like in like a comfort zone, which I feel from like my talking to other people that that's something that people do often. um, so when I got done university, we kind of I guess transitioned to being like swingers, I guess.
Mhm.
That would be the title that we were given at that time. So again, and we started to then focus more on like foursomes was kind of the go-to.
Mhm.
And the same idea, just kind of like lacking that connection with that. But we
Right.
learned a lot during that time. It was kind of a lot of trial and error. And then about 6 years ago, we kind of like dove deeper into the emotional. So, and in doing that, that's where we started to kind of like open up to close friends a little bit more, and like people knowing about our situation, which kind of is in itself. And then 4 years ago, while playing hockey, my current boyfriend, he ended up joining our team, and he knew about our situation. He was completely mono and didn't really have any experience, but he was really interested in that. So he kind of like kept hanging out with us, and like continued to play hockey. And we never really thought that it would turn into 4 years later where we're at now, but it definitely did develop, and it was kind of like an awesome experience in itself. About over a year ago, he officially moved into the home with us, so we all live together. And about the same time is also when my husband developed a more serious girlfriend as well. So
Mhm.
she
Mhm.
lives separately from us, but that's kind of the history of where we're at.
Nice. I love it. So there was a couple of things that you were talking about there. One was when you mentioned swingers, like you kind of put it in a quote, right? Because maybe there's a discomfort or something with labels, or maybe there's just something about labels. And I wanted to talk to you kind of about this idea of labels. So you've been practicing non-monogamy for 12 years, right? You went from open to swinging and now to polyamory. And we've got all of these different like rules, I guess, all of these different ways of interacting with other partners in each of these. So can you tell me a little bit about like the experience? I mean, one of the things that you talked about was that it was kind of lacking that emotional connection. So how did you approach that? How did you approach talking to your husband and saying, you know what, it's fun, hanging out with these other couples and having sexy times and doing all these things, but like I'm looking for something deeper. I'm looking for something more. How did that conversation go?
I think with him, I think like even for me, that conversation was kind of I'm the one that was seeking deeper, whereas he may not be on like the same emotional wave. I think he's kind of like comfortable with either or, but he was more about making my experiences more comfortable. I use like kind of not swinging always being like a one and done type, but if you picture
Mhm.
kind of like going to the bar scene, it could be more of like the one and done type. And that just has never really been a thing of mine at all.
Mhm.
So I think kind of gearing towards making sure that it was going to be even when we were swinging, we focused on making sure that it was going to be an ongoing thing instead of just a one and done.
Got it.
So there's been even more recent experiences. I wouldn't say that we don't dip, I guess, but there's been like some more recent experiences where there was a couple that was approaching like our polycule, and they wanted to have more of a sexual experience, and as the time got closer and closer, it just kind of felt like they were just looking for that like sexual, whereas we wanted more like come over, play games, and
Right.
like have drinks and be social. And they were just kind of like, yeah, we're gonna come and then we're gonna do our thing and then leave. And that made me really uncomfortable. And both actually of my partners, they like right away recognized that that wasn't my thing, and they were really comfortable to be like, you get to make that decision. Like if you're not comfortable or whatever, then it doesn't matter to us. It would be great to try something new, but if you're not comfortable, let's just say no.
Yeah, that's the thing about consent, right? If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. That's I mean, that's a lesson that I learned from the community years ago, and I kind of just carry that with me. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. I don't believe that we should be trying to convince our partners to be comfortable with one thing or another. Like if they're not comfortable, then cool, you're not comfortable with it. If you want to take the time to work on that, marinate on that, and maybe become more comfortable, then great. That's absolutely on you. But I'm not going to be the one to pressure a partner into getting into a situation that they don't want to be involved in.
You can't handle the truth.
Yeah, exactly. It's got to be true to that person. It's got to be absolute truth. So, all right. Staying on this idea of labels, right? So you guys were doing the open and swinging, and then you transitioned to polyamory. Did you discover the term at some point and it was like, ding, light bulb? Can you tell me a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, like I didn't know a lot of the terminology, even like when I said swingers in quotation mark. I guess we just kind of thought we were having fun and didn't know that there was a label for it until people started to call us that. So even with the poly situation, I feel like we were just kind of dating, and I guess we still kind of thought that we were swingers, but we weren't. And then it was actually ironically, my husband's girlfriend at the time, I knew her first actually, and she was the one that kind of introduced me to more of this terms because she was already living that lifestyle. So just meeting her and learning a lot more terminology was kind of through her. So and then I did my own research after that. So, but
what books or what research did you do when you discovered polyamory? Like, did you read any specific books, any blogs, anything like that?
Yeah, so I have like read the typical one, like The Ethical Slut, and then I'm reading the Poly Home right now. So like that has all the different types of poly within it. And then usually at night when I can't sleep, I just kind of Google more. I try to focus a lot on like kind of what's happening in Canada though, just because some of the Facebook groups that I've been in, they talk a lot about like legal things, and I'm like, I don't think that's like applicable to here. So then I end up doing a lot of my research, and I like to keep up with kind of like some of the exciting stuff that's happening here. I mentioned that like multiple parents being listed on a birth certificate recently.
Right.
I forget what province that's in, but that is like super exciting to me.
Yeah.
We're planning to expand in the future with kids. So yeah, like just reading about that is super exciting to me. So
yeah. When we talked, we got a chance to talk a little bit yesterday, and you mentioned that in Canada there's no laws necessarily against polyamory. Is that
yeah,
am I
like to my
understanding it right?
knowledge, I haven't found anything that necessarily like is going to put us in jail, like to refer to, even if I was to refer to somebody as being like my boyfriend or my husband. Like there's nothing that I've found out there anyways in my research that's gonna, put jail time, whereas I know with some of the states and the US that is the case. So we're kind of lucky. There still isn't really, I guess, protection out there either. Having said that, like my employer, I am at like a larger organization, and my employer is very familiar with my home situation, and they're very kind of supportive. Like I don't have a lot of issues, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all employers in Ontario or Canada are going to be like that. I'm just really fortunate with where I am.
Nice. Well, that's a perfect segue actually into talking about the struggles of coming out, because being in Canada, you do have fewer restrictions. As you were saying, here in the States, there are states that have laws against adultery. So I don't know if it's necessarily jail, but I am aware that they will slap people with fines and do all kinds of other things. So there are actually laws against adultery, and polyamory would be considered adultery in the eyes of the law in those states.
Oh, hell no!
Exactly, Steve. Hell no. Come on, people. Massachusetts, on the other hand, is one state that has essentially legalized polyamory, or recognizes it on a governmental level. So that's pretty great. For you in Canada, you don't necessarily have the legal repercussions, but possibly, you're at your company, everything's okay, but it's not necessarily the case all the way around. What are some of the struggles that you're seeing for yourself and for your community in Canada when it comes to coming out?
I think like a lot of the challenges are still similar. One of the things, like I mentioned, I am like in a rural area. So small community problems. Like we're very active in sports, and we are like very, very social people. So that has its benefits and its challenges in itself. So actually when I met my boyfriend, he was telling his best friend that he was bringing his girlfriend to a party. And it was supposed to be like a small party, and it was, but again, small community. And I show up and I end up knowing multiple people at this small gathering, and they're like, isn't she engaged? Which at the time I was engaged, we weren't married yet. And so that kind of was its own battle. That started a spiral of issues, actually. Because we weren't really like out at that time, just kind of close friends knew. So that came down to like my boyfriend was, being threatened, and was like being called a homewrecker because they thought that like there was a lot of cheating involved and that it wasn't communication, and didn't really realize that it was consensual. And then there's like the other side where people think like, oh, they're just really freaky, I guess. And that part of it. And then we also we had close friends and stuff as well kind of back off that had known us for a long time. Like they just felt uncomfortable. Like once they knew, it's like they didn't know when everything was okay, but then when they did know, a lot of them like associated us with being swingers, which there is kind of like a bad taste maybe for that, like that, we're going to approach everybody and anybody with legs and try to date them and their husband, and and that's like a lot of the stigma that we had to actually go through in the beginning. And we had friends that like didn't actually come to our buck and doe, which I don't know what you guys call that, like Jack and Jill, stag and doe. But when we were getting married, because they were afraid that if they came, then they were going to be socially classed as the same as us, that they were going to be considered swingers if they came and that they associated with us. So, I mean, that was really awful to kind of go through in the beginning. But I think as like time progressed, I really wanted to break down that stigma associated with it. So, like we would all go out as a family, all three of us, and we would do things together, whether it be continue to play sports and stuff. And people got to see like how we interact. And I actually had like one friend, they invited us over and like for a game night, which we love games. And after we had left, she had came out and said like, I was really nervous to invite you guys over because I thought you guys would try to hit on us and that would make me uncomfortable. But you guys just came over and you played games and it was a lot of fun and we should do that again. And, so just like breaking down that like we don't want to date everybody, but for some reason that's kind of the first thing that people kind of jump to. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. That is a huge stigma. That's like a narrative or a story that people, when they learn about what polyamory is, because I think a lot of people don't even know the term, right? They don't even, you're poly, who, what? You're poly, what are you talking about, right? So when they start to educate themselves, when we tell them, well, polyamorous means, I have multiple partners. So, I have, my wife and my girlfriend, or, my husband and my boyfriend, or, whatever, you have all these different things. they definitely have that fear. That is a narrative. So it's interesting.
I don't think it means what you think it means.
Thank you. Couldn't have said it better myself. That's good call on that clip. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that we're going to go after every single one of your partners. And I love that you actually had that opportunity to hang out with a friend and really change their mind on that. That's wonderful.
I think we've been able to change a lot of people's mind because we have grown, and like I said, we are very known in our small community. So we have a lot of people that will come to us and kind of like ask questions, and I'm the first person that like I'm happy to talk about it. Anybody that wants to learn, I'm happy to explain things, anything that like I've experienced, anything about my own situation. And I think people just like, you know, the getting those questions out and learning has broken down the stigma around it in general, and that we have like been able to rebuild friendships that may have been broken in the beginning because of it. So, and even like with our family and stuff, as I had mentioned, we did end up coming out officially with our like immediate family members as well. That kind of happened around the same time that our partner moved into our house, just because, you know, it was really uncomfortable to disclude him from events. So like family dinners and things like that. It was just really, really hard. So last summer we decided to come out to our family as well.
That this is somebody that you care about, somebody that's an important part of your life. You don't want to exclude them. Like you said, you don't want them not to be part of those family dinners and part of all these things. I love that. Can you, if you're comfortable, can you tell me a little bit about that experience of coming out to immediate family? How did they take it? And like, who did you tell first? Was there like a priority list of people that you wanted to tell?
So my boyfriend's parents, they knew from pretty much the beginning, because I was engaged or married when we first met. So they've always been really welcoming, and they've known from the beginning. So it wasn't too much. I mean, it was a little bit scary at first, but they're really open, and they like invite me and my husband to like all the family functions already. So then I started with my husband's mom. She's more of a chill person, I guess is the best way to describe it. And we were actually at our family cottage when I decided to tell her. And it went really good, like really good. Like she was so open and welcoming, and even like to this day, like she's so considerate of others. Like she is always making sure that she includes everybody when there's something going on. And so does like I guess my sister-in-law and brother-in-law on my husband's side, I guess they've always known too. So I guess we just were close in age, so I don't consider that a coming out. They're kind of more of like in the friend zone. But they also like are very inclined to invite everybody to dinner and all that. So on the phone when she's saying goodbye, she always says to like make sure you say hi to both of them, kind of thing.
Right.
When we first told her about my husband's girlfriend, she has some children. And it was around Christmas was coming up, and she goes, "Oh, like I'm just wondering, like, what do the kids like or whatever? I'd like to buy them a Christmas present." So like she's just very, very
it's so heartwarming.
So, yeah, and then on my side of the family, I've only really officially told my mom, and even to this day, I feel like she's still digesting it. So.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I'm right there in that same boat with you. You know, when I came out, I told my mom, and she didn't say a word. We were driving somewhere. She didn't say a word the entire ride. When we finally got there, she gets out of the house. She gives me a hug. She says, "I love you, mijo." You know, whatever. Okay, so mom loves me. She's not wild or crazy about this, you know, choice that I'm making. She's not excited about it, but she loves me. So that's enough.
Yeah, and I feel like we have that across the board. Like I haven't actually, like coming into our family, I haven't really necessarily experienced anything bad. So it's a lot to digest. especially like if you have like religious backgrounds in certain family members as
Mhm.
well. But overall, like the advantage of being out, like a lot of people really contemplate whether it's worth it or not. And I mean, you've heard
Ooh.
my bad side, you know, in the beginning of kind of what I had to go through. But now, like being out is amazing. Like I get to talk about it with whoever. Like
Mhm,
even, you know,
mhm.
some people that are trying to find partners, like finding new partners, if that's what you're still seeking, like that is easier. Being able to include everybody, like I said, family
Yes.
dinners, like it's amazing. Not being able to have to like hide who you are, like that's just so key. And I mean, all three of my partners like messaged before going on, like wishing me luck and everything like that. So like the support system of going through all this outweighs all the negative. Like I would never turn back and change it because like it's so rewarding. Like I love everything that we do together, and like it's literally a family and we're growing.
I love that so much. That is such a wonderful thing to hear for anybody who is considering coming out right now. You know, more power to you. I wish you the best. You know, if anybody is considering coming out, wants to talk about it, I will make myself available for sure. If you want to send me a DM, there it is, Practicing Poly A. And if you would like to get connected with Jessie with your permission, I would, you know, connect you guys as well. It's, I agree. I agree. It's totally worth it. For me, the most important people that I had to tell in person were my parents. After that, it was like, hey, whoever finds out online or when I start doing this podcast or whatever else, cool.
That's good. One less thing.
Exactly. One less thing I have to worry about. One less thing I have to hide. One more way that I can be authentic.
And being out, like you said, like it's about even reducing the stigma. Like one post I know that you
Yes.
had saw on a Facebook group that I had actually was the author of, but I wasn't the author of the photo, so I didn't let you share it. But it was a picture that had one child and four parents in the picture, and I really kind of took people through an emotional roller coaster of comparing this to a broken family with like separated parents and then them moving
I
on
remember
to
that one.
others versus picturing this as a like a poly type family, and kind of the stigma of like, you know, people are so socially accepting now of like separated families and are supportive as long as everybody's there for the child. And then I kind of compared that to then picturing this picture being like a poly picture, and how does that make people feel? And often it makes people feel uncomfortable. So I really challenge people to think like, why does this make it uncomfortable? If everybody's there still for the child and everybody's happy, then why does it matter if they're living a different lifestyle than others? And I really just, you know, as we're starting to plan to have children, I don't know how that's still going to see and be viewed like socially, and that's something that we still like kind of struggle with, like who's going to pick up the kid from, you know, our public school of 100 people, because that's how many kids are in the school. You know,
Right.
what are the parents going to think having multiple parents and whatnot? So I just really want to reduce that stigma even around that, as that's our next journey.
Absolutely love that. And an encouraging note for you and for anybody else who's listening who is polyamorous and thinking of growing your family. As I keep talking about, this Friday, I'm going to have Dr. Elizabeth Sheff on the show. She has been studying polyamorous families for 25 years. Her first book, called The Polyamorists Next Door, covers her first 15 years of research, and she and other researchers continue to find that children from polyamorous families grow up with more resources, right? There's more time for adults to spend with that child. There's more attention being given to that child. There's more financial resources when there are more adults in the house. So there's a lot of actually advantages for polyamorous children, and we'll definitely touch on that this Friday, 11 a.m. Keep bringing it up. But yeah, so Jessie, I hope that that's encouraging for you and for anybody else who's listening. Wow, this has been such a wonderful show. We're coming up on our 30 minutes. Is there any last minute advice or just a last minute note that you would want to leave for the audience? Final thoughts.
I would say to just not give up. If this is truly what you want and you're not doing it as a relationship fixer, because that's not the way to go about it. But if this is truly what you and your partner want, have lots of open communication and conversations about it, and don't give up. A lot of people start by just pursuing like, a female, which is okay if that's what you want and you're doing it ethically. But it can be hard, and it can be very discouraging for men to find partners in this kind of setting compared to the females, which, I'm not going to say we have it easier, but I feel like sometimes we do have it easier. I just, to the men, to not give up because your wife or your girlfriend was able to find somebody before you as well. Just be open-minded. And, I think it's like our journey has been over, like I had mentioned, over 12 years now. And there was lots of hard times and it wasn't always easy, but the reward in the end is like amazing. And honestly, if you knew me personally, and you knew anybody that did know me, like they're going to say, oh yeah, they're kind of like in this, like, interesting relationship, but man, they're so awesome people. Like their relationship is so neat once they learn about it, and it's so strong, and we're able to talk about everything. So like, just keep working at it, and it will pay off. It really will.
Nice. I 100% agree with you. We didn't get a chance to get into it. Maybe we'll get into it tomorrow. But jealousy was something that I wanted to ask about. And, that's definitely something that comes up often. And, we've been talking to, and we'll continue to talk to therapists and relationship coaches and real people in the community that have dealt with jealousy. So this will be something that we'll continue to talk about. And, so much more to go, so much more to learn. Jessie, thank you so much for spending some time with me again. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you, as always, to our live audience. Thank you all for tuning in. As a reminder, when we're live, you get no commercial interruptions, but the same cannot be said for those podcast downloads. So if you want to avoid the commercial interruptions, be sure to catch us live Monday through Wednesday, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, or sign up for our Patreon, where you get access to our commercial-free RSS feed and support the show. Don't forget to head over to bondingproject.com between now and this Friday, so you'll know what Dr. Eli Sheff and I are talking about, and subscribe. Keep subscribing to YouTube. Of course, keep subscribing to YouTube. But leave us a review on iTunes. Leave us a review on Spotify, wherever it is that you're listening to us. Would really appreciate that. Thanks again for hanging out with us today.
Have a nice day.
Thank you for tuning in to the Practicing Polyamory podcast. Would you or someone in your polycule like to be a guest? Sign up at practicingpolyamory.com and join the conversation. Please support us by subscribing, liking, and following us on social media at Practicing Polya by clicking any of the affiliate links on our website, or by subscribing at patreon.com